Good morning. Welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church, where compassion leads us to work for justice and equality. I'm glad you came today, and it's my hope that you will find something here that nourishes your heart, feeds your mind, and grows your spirit. My name's Carol Kappa, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. Be you a spiritual seeker, an atheist, or a theist, whether you find inspiration in the great books or the great outdoors or just great conversations, all are welcome in this inclusive congregation. So to newcomers and to old friends alike, together we say, welcome. Our guest speaker in the pulpit today is Daniel Polk. And Daniel is the executive director of North Texas Unitarian Universalist Congregations, or how we say NTUC here. And I've had the pleasure of serving on the board of NTUC as Westside's representative for since about 2015. And Daniel is originally from Iowa. I just found out this morning he graduated from Iowa State with a degree in interior design. And he has lived here in Texas for a few decades, and he says he's learned to draw, sort of. And in his spare time, he enjoys wordplay and coloring wood for art projects. So when you see him after the service, ask to see some of the work that he's done. He's got some great pieces he can show you in his phone. But he tries to use his privilege for the benefit of society. So now please make yourself comfortable for our morning's prelude, and that's Spring Joy by Mendelssohn, performed by Yuki Kumamoto, as this is the first day of spring. Our opening words are from William Schultz. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. And now in this time and place, let us worship together. A flame within a chalice, a cup with a stem and foot, represents the Unitarian Universalist Association, or UUA, and is a symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice is a symbol of both the heritage of our past and the light of hope within this church today. If you have a chalice with you at home, please light it with our chalice lighters this morning. And now I invite Sue Spell to come and light our chalice today.
Our chalice lighting words are from Dr. Rebecca Savage. We light our flaming chalice each week with a simple spark to make holy our time together. With this flame, may our highest intentions be refreshed. With this flame, may we remember who we are and whose we are. With this flame, may our faith be renewed and reignited guide our journey. Amen, and may it be so.
All right, our opening hymn this morning is number 121, We'll Build a Land in the Gray Hymnal. Please stand if you are able. If you'd like to have a close-up view of our Time for All Ages, presented by our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Nikki Kennedy.
Good morning. I'm happy to see all of you guys today. Andrea, you want a cushion? You and your mom want a cushion? You can have both of them. That's okay. Today I want to read a book to you guys. It kind of goes with what we talked about in RE earlier. Today we talked about seeds of compassion, right? And ways that we can show kindness to each other. So I want you to listen to this book, and I want you to think about ways that we should have shown kindness and how we can make that change. It's called Separate is Never Equal. Sylvia had on her black shoes. They were shiny and new. Her hair was perfectly parted in 2 long braids. It was her first day at the Westminster School. The halls were crowded with students, and she was looking for her locker when a young white boy pointed at her and yelled, "Go back to the other school. You don't belong here." For the rest of the day, Sylvia did not speak or introduce herself in class. She kept her head down when walking in the halls, and when she got home that afternoon, she told her mom what had happened. "I don't want to go to that school anymore. Those kids are mean." Sylvia said to her mother, "Don't you know why we are fighting for this?" 3 years earlier, in the summer of 1944, Sylvia and her brothers, Jerome and Gonzalo, had helped their parents, and they had moved from the crowded city of Santa Ana, California, to a farm nearby in Westminster. Her father, Gonzalo, had labored for years as a field worker, picking grapes and oranges. Now he was leasing his own farm. He was going to be the boss. On their new farm, they were going to grow asparagus, chilies, and tomatoes. As the summer came to an end and the first day of school neared, their aunt drove Sylvia and her brothers and their cousins, Alice and Virginia, to the local public school on 17th Street so they could enroll. Sylvia was going to enter 3rd grade, and Gonzalo was going to enter 2nd, and Jerome 1st. "What a handsome building," thought Sylvia, as they pulled into the parking lot. Tall trees lined the street in front of the school. There was a playground with monkey bars and even a red swing. When they walked into the school, they noticed that the hallways were spacious and clean. "I'm here to enroll the children in school," said their aunt when they arrived at the principal's office. The secretary gave their aunt 2 enrollment forms, one for Alice and one for Virginia, the cousins. But she did not give her enrollment forms for Sylvia and her brothers. "They cannot attend this school," the secretary said. "They must go to the Mexican school." Why do we have to go to the Mexican school?" Sylvia wondered. She was not Mexican, she was American. She spoke perfect English. Her father was from Mexico, but he had become a U.S. citizen. Her mother was from Puerto Rico, which was a U.S. territory. Their aunt was upset, but we all live in this part of town. Sylvia looked at her cousins. They had light skin and long auburn hair, and their last name was Vidari. Their father was Mexican, but of French descent. Then she looked at her brothers and at her own hands and her bare arms. She wondered, is it because we have brown skin and thick black hair and our last name is Mendez? "Rules are rules," said the secretary. "The Mendez children have to go to the Mexican school." "I will not be enrolling any of the children in this school," said their aunt. And she stormed out of the office, taking Sylvia and the other children with her. When they arrived at home, their aunt told Sylvia's father what had happened, and Mr. Mendez, her father, told him not to worry. It had to be a mistake. He would take care of it. He was a businessman, and he was used to dealing with people. The next day, Mr. Mendez met with Mr. Harris, the superintendent of the school. Mr. Mendez explained that his family had just moved to a nearby farm. The public school on 17th Street is the closest school to our house, and my children, they should attend it. Your children have to go to the Mexican school, said Mr. Harris, but why? He was not given an answer other than, that's just how it's done. In the following days, Mr. Mendez met with Mr. Atkinson, the county board superintendent, Mr. Harris's supervisor. And when the school board, which oversaw all of the school in Orange County, but they all said the same thing, your children have to go to the other school. They kept asking why, but no one could give them a satisfactory answer. That fall, Sylvia and her brothers had to attend Hoover Elementary on Olive Street in the city of Westminster. The building was a clapboard shack, and the halls were not spacious or clean. A cow pasture surrounded the school. The students had to eat their lunch outside, and flies would land on their food. There was an electric wire that surrounded the pasture to keep the cows in. If you touched it, it would shock you. The school did not have a playground or even a red swing. The Mendez family did not give up. Time and time again, Sylvia heard her father talking with coworkers, friends, and other parents. It's not fair that our kids have to go to an inferior school, he said. It's not only that the building is a problem, it's that the teachers of the school don't care about our children's education. They expect them to drop out by the 8th grade. How will our children succeed? How can they have opportunities to become doctors or lawyers or teachers or anything else? Mr. Mendez created a group called the Parents Association of Mexican American Children. He tried to collect signatures for a petition to integrate the school so that all children, regardless of their skin color or background, could have the same opportunities. But every time he asked someone to sign the petition, he would get the same answer. We don't want any problems. Many of the parents worked on farms owned by white families and feared they would lose their jobs if they supported the petition. One day, a truck driver overheard Mr. Mendez trying to convince workers to sign the petition. You know, you could just file a lawsuit. The truck driver told Mr. Mendez about a lawyer named Daniel Marcus, who had filed a lawsuit on behalf of people in San Bernardino and had helped them integrate the public schools there. At that time, not only were schools segregated, but also other public places were as well, such as pools and parks and movie theaters. Some businesses had signs that read, "No dogs or Mexicans allowed," and Mr. Mendez decided right then and there to hire Mr. Marcus, even if it meant having to use all his savings to do so. Over the next few months, Mr. Mendez and Mr. Marcus traveled all over Orange County looking for people who had experienced similar problems. Sylvia watched her father leave early in the morning. Sometimes she saw him come home in the evening, but often she only heard footsteps when he got in late at night. When he was away, Sylvia's mother had to take care of the farm. Mrs. Mendez would get Sylvia and her brothers ready for school, and then she would go out to the fields. She started the irrigation system, drove the tractor, oversaw the workers, and solved any problems that arose. With the help of Mr. Marcus, the lawyer, Mr. Mendez found and talked with other families who were dealing with segregation. One of them was the Estrada family. Mr. Estrada had fought in World War II. He had risked his life next to Americans of all races and all backgrounds. But when he returned to America from the war, he found out that his children were not allowed to attend school with white children. It's just an injustice. The Estrada family joined the Mendez case, and so did 3 more families. The families were from different school districts, all in Orange County. Mr. Marcus wanted to show that the segregation of students affected not only Sylvia and her brothers, but more than 5,000 children in the public school system all over Orange County. On March 2nd, 1945, Mr. Marcus went to the courthouse and filed the lawsuit. The trial was held in a courthouse in Los Angeles. Sylvia and her family dressed in their best clothes, and in the courtroom they sat and they listened. The hearing lasted 5 days. Each day, Mr. Marcus called to the stand parents from different districts in Orange County, and the superintendents from each one too. On the first day, Mr. Kent, the superintendent of the Garden Grove district, was questioned. He said he sent children to the Mexican school to help them learn English. That's a lie, Sylvia thought. Her English was as good as the English of any other children in that Westminster school. Do you give children any tests? Asked Mr. Marcus. Mr. Kent claimed he did. We do so by talking to them. That's another lie. Sylvia wanted to yell. No one had questioned her. They rejected her from the Westminster School without asking her a thing. Judge Paul McCormick took almost a year to give his decision, but when he did, he ruled in favor of the Mendez family. In his ruling, he said that public education must be open to all children by a unified school association, regardless of their lineage. That meant that every single kiddo, everywhere, must be allowed to attend school, no matter what his or her background was. The Mendez victory made newspaper headlines. Sylvia's family was ecstatic, but they did not have much time to celebrate because the school board appealed the case. They also asked for another trial. Sylvia and her family had to go to the state court in San Francisco to argue the case again. In the new trial, the Mendez family received support from the League of United Latin American Citizens, the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, the Japanese Citizens of America, the Jewish Congress, and other organizations. These groups sent letters with information relevant to the case and asked the judge to rule in favor of the Mendez family. Sylvia was amazed that people of different backgrounds and from different parts of the country who had never even met her family were getting into the case and trying to help them. But her mother said, "When you fight for justice, others will follow." On April 15, 1947, the judge in the Court of Appeals in San Francisco ruled in favor of the Mendez family again. That June, Governor Warren signed the law that said all children in California were allowed to go to school together, regardless of race, ethnicity, or language. "So remember," said Sylvia's mother, "we fought to make sure you could attend a good school and have equal opportunities." Sylvia thought long and hard about what her mother had said. The next day, she returned to the Westminster School, the one with a red swing. This time, she did not have it to listen to any whispers. She ignored the children who pointed at her and called her names. Instead, she held her head high. Her parents had fought not only for her and her brothers, but for all the children, all of her classmates. Looking around, she saw that other children were smiling at her. By the end of the day, she had made a friend. And by the end of the school year, she had made many friends with many different backgrounds. She knew that her family had fought for that. So today in RE, we talked about ways that the Dalai Lama talked about showing seeds of compassion. And I hope you guys will remember all the ways that you talked about you can sow seeds of compassion at Westside, at your school, with your friends. And remember that when we're really kind to people and we're compassionate, it makes for a better day for all of us. And we should keep nurturing those seeds. Thanks for joining me today. You got it.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, children. In our community here at Westside, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. And we do this because each person in this community has value, and each person's experience matters. And we would like you to submit any of your personal joys and concerns to our pastoral care team by sending an email to us at pastoralcare@westsideu.org. Or you can contact any member of the pastoral care team. They'll be wearing a name tag like the one I have on this morning. Or you can also pick up a pink sheet like this that's on the table right outside this door, and just submit it to us right before the service. So this morning we didn't have any concerns shared that I know of, but I'm going to take a personal point of privilege to share two joys that I have. So March is the March Madness month, right? And in the Kappa family, that's happened last year. Bless you. Last year and this year. So last year, March is the month my father turns. Last year he turned 93, and today we're celebrating his 94th birthday. So last year we gathered at the end of March. My sister flew down from Minnesota, and we had a big Kappa spaghetti feed at my niece's house. And so we all gathered around for a family picture, because we hadn't been together due to the pandemic. So her husband sets up the camera where you push the button and then he runs to get in the picture. And right about he gets in the picture and he says, "Okay, everybody say Miranda's pregnant." And we all just screamed because she'd been trying to have a baby for 8 years. And we were just so excited, we just couldn't imagine. So the baby was born in November, and he's doing great. And so now this year we're meeting to celebrate his birthday today, and my sister has flown down again with her husband from Minneapolis, and we're going to gather for the birthday party. So we'll see what exciting announcements we find out about today. And then the second joy I have is that as a proud Horned Frog supporter and alumni, the Frogs won their first basketball game in the March Madness the other night. And then tonight they play the second game against Arizona at 8:20. So keep your fingers crossed and we'll see what happens. So not every joy or concern can be shared openly with our community, but some must be shared eye to eye or simply just held in the heart. And we further recognize that some do not have voices with which to speak the depth of their pain or the height of their celebration. And we make space each week for musical centering, knowing the life and experience of every person matters, and together our lights shine together. So as we hold all the joys and concerns among us, both those spoken and unspoken, let us center to the song Meditation on Breathing by Sarah Dan Jones, performed by Yuki and sung and led by Tricia. It is number 1009 in your teal hymnal.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Good morning. My name is Diane Austin, and I am one of the meditation group leaders. At this time, I invite you to relax your mind and body and join in a time of meditation. I will begin with a pastoral introduction before we move into a time for silence. Our Tibetan prayer bowl will sound to signal the start of your own meditation, prayer, or reflection, and it will sound again at the end. Our introduction today is a meditation from Katie Krimitsos entitled "You Are So Special." Let's begin by closing your eyes and relaxing your body, settling into a position that's comfortable for you. As soon as your eyes close, you may be more aware of the thoughts popping up in your mind. Busy with figuring things out, lining up the day's logistics, reminding you about yesterday's events or tomorrow's responsibilities. You don't have to choose to hold on to any of these thoughts. You can let them all go every time you breathe out. Feeling them leave your mind like bubbles into the air. Breathe them out and let yourself feel the spaciousness expand as the thoughts are cleared out. Do you know who you are? You are the sun and the moon and the stars as they dance with each other in the cosmic ballet. You are the waves of the great oceans, moving the land and the life you touch with a gentle yet powerful force. You are the tiny grain of sand on the beach, surrounded by your brothers and sisters, aware you're a part of a beautiful whole, and yet so uniquely your own special piece of earth. You are light, you are love, you are special. Do you want to know a secret? There is no one else in this entire universe exactly like you. No one. You are your own special flavor of beauty. And no matter how much pain, ego, and suffering there may have been in your yesterdays, you deserve everything you could possibly dream of. And today, right now, is the place to be to invite it all to you. Right here, breathing in these words, forgiving yourself, challenging yourself, honoring yourself, loving yourself. Breathe. Breathe out all the expectations, all the perfects, all the disappointments, all the shame and guilt and sorries, and breathe in the truth. Your heart, your light, your kindness. Breathe in you. You are so special, and there is no one in this entire universe just like you. Namaste, beautiful. May it be so, blessed be, and amen.
The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. In the spirit of generosity, Westside chooses to reach out to our wider community. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its ministries. Our plate offering for March will go to Nami, Tarrant County, the National Alliance for Mental Illness of Tarrant County. Nami Tarrant County is a grassroots mental health organization, part of the largest grassroots mental health organization in America. In addition to Tarrant County, it also serves Johnson, Parker, and Wise counties. It provides free, peer-led mental health education classes and support groups for individuals living with mental health conditions and their loved ones, as well as hosting community events. Its goals are to advocate for non-discriminatory access to quality health care, housing, education, and employment for people with mental illness, and to improve the quality of life for all affected by mental illness and eradicate the stigma and misconceptions of mental disorders. Nami Tarrant County holds monthly support groups at its Fort Worth office, and it provides presentations which offer audiences the opportunity to hear stories of lived experiences from people with mental health conditions. The gift of the congregation will be most gratefully received here in the sanctuary through the Vanco mobile app, our church website, or a check by mail. Please enjoy this musical offering, Awake, Awake, by Eva Kendrick, performed by Trisha Bowes and Yuki. Eva Kendrick is an award-winning composer and voice instructor, and she's the director of the Eva Kendrick Voice Studio, professor of voice at Dean College, and the director of music at First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church of Medford, Massachusetts, where she also runs the Music at the Meeting House concert series. And now enjoy our
offering. Under snow the earth renewing, after frost the seeds are blooming, over time and beyond doubt, all
Thank you, Tricia and Yuki. Very beautiful. And now thank you for putting into practice the spiritual virtue of generosity. Our giving connects us to the wider web of our community. And now, please welcome our guest in the pulpit, Daniel Polk.
Good morning. How are y'all doing? I'll have you know, I have learned to say y'all, and not just y'all, but might, could, and fixin' to. So I can drawl a bit. A little over a year ago, when Betty White turned 99, I saw a comment on Facebook. A friend said that this legend was born in a decade when a white supremacist was in the White House, domestic terrorists stalked the land, and the country was defined by grotesque income inequality. What a dramatic transformation she has witnessed. Maybe not. We have made progress, but there's still much work to do, not just on racial equality or socioeconomic equity, but all of the isms. As poet Audre Lorde wrote, there is no hierarchy of oppression. It takes all of us and requires self-study, hard work, and sacrifice. I also want to tell a story of someone who used her position and privilege to tilt the course of history. That's in a bit. Confronting bigotry does start with self-awareness. Many of us who enjoy privilege often do not realize it, like fish being unaware that they're swimming in water. Male privilege is something I usually don't think about, though I do benefit. The average white gay man earns more salary than a woman, lesbian or not, and the list goes on. I also don't have to worry about driving while black while going to our office in the affluent Park cities of Dallas. After studying male privilege, Peggy McIntosh started looking at how white privilege is similar. Rather than asking her colleagues of color for examples, she made up her own list of 26 ways she benefits. Here are the first 5. If I wish, I can arrange to be in the company of people who are my race most of the time. If I should need to move, I can be pretty sure of renting or purchasing housing in an area which I can afford, in which I would want to live. I can be pretty sure that my neighbors in such a location will be neutral or pleasant to me. I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured that I will not be followed or harassed. 5, I can turn on the television or open to the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented. You know, we could probably make up our own list, more than 26 instances of discrimination and exclusion. What would you add? The next step is developing awareness of others and difficulties they may encounter on a daily basis. Some of you will remember the brown eyes, blue eyes exercise, first led by a teacher, 3rd grade teacher in Northeast Iowa the day after Dr. King was assassinated. She'd been teaching her class about how it feels about Native Americans and wanted to help her class learn how it felt to walk in someone else's moccasins. On the first day, she told the brown-eyed students that they were superior and gave them special treatment. The next day, she reversed it and told the blue-eyed students that they were better. At the end of the second day, she said the exercise was over and had the students write about what they felt. The reaction was mixed, both local and national, and it got reverberated for many years. It's part of my story because I grew up just 70 miles from that town and I knew people who lived there. Decades later, some people in town were still angry with that teacher. Jane Elliott, who continues to lead diversity trainings. You can see her videos on YouTube and other media. She is a tough leader and takes no excuses from people who do not want to confront their internal biases. We're also connected in ways we might not be aware. Louise Raggio, an activist and longtime member of First Dallas, said one reason she worked for women's economic freedom is that keeping wives dependent on husbands restricted the men as well, obligating them to continue earning salaries when they might want to pursue art projects, run for office, or study abroad. I can't think of better words to describe our connection than Dr. King, and I can't, of course, go without a quote from him. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere, everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Audre Lorde echoed these words in her essay, "There is no hierarchy of oppression." Any attack against Black people is a lesbian and gay issue because I and thousands of other Black women are members of the lesbian community. Any attack against lesbians and gays is a Black issue because thousands of lesbians and gay men are Black. We can't just pick one group to support or not, especially limited to ones that look like us. It takes all of us to dismantle the systemic discrimination, people of color who have seats at the table. We who have privilege need to stay there, make space, and listen to others. We also need to speak out at times, especially when others are not granted the same privileges as us. It might be as simple as the person behind us in line at the grocery store getting asked for 2 forms of ID when our writing a check was no problem. Or going to a bar. I remember a time years ago when some young men of color were getting hassled and asked for 2 IDs just after my friend was admitted with no ID at all. Al Calkin was an elder in the gay community, and that employee was not ready for the professorial lecture on discrimination. There are many examples in Hollywood, and I'll share just a couple. Frank Sinatra often stood up for Sammy Davis Jr., more than once refusing a gig when his friend was excluded. Once a hotel said that Davis would have to use the back door, the service entrance. Frank gave an ultimatum. If Sammy Davis has to use the back door, Frank Sinatra comes in the back door. The embarrassed hotel backed down. Marilyn Monroe was a friend and a fan of Ella Fitzgerald and annoyed that the singer was not being booked at the Mokamba nightclub. She called up the owner and said if they booked Ella for a week, she would be there every night in the front row. She would take an entire table, which of course would surely gather press coverage. Marilyn was there, glamorous and with a gaggle of friends. Ella never had to play a small club again. Marilyn wasn't the first actress to take a stand. Fannie Campbell was an unlikely activist. She was part of a British theatrical family, the first Shakespearean actress, or her aunt was the Shakespearean actress Sarah Siddons. This was a British Unitarian family, but religion wasn't a big part of their life. Fannie was educated mainly in France and published 2 plays and a book of poetry in her early years. She first appeared on the stage at the age of 20, and in 1829, her popularity ensured the profitability of her father's theater. 3 years later, when they needed money, they did a tour of the United States, during which she met and married a wealthy American, Pierce Mies Butler, in 1834. As a teenager, her husband and his brother had inherited their grandfather's plantations off the Georgia coast. Pierce Butler was a founding father and one of the largest slaveholders in the U.S. While the home was in Philadelphia, Mr. and Mrs. Butler went south for the winter of 1838-39. Fannie insisted on going because she wanted to learn about the conditions of slavery. Appalled, she recorded much of it in her diary, but her father demanded that she not publish it. Theirs was not a happy marriage. Pierce was abusive and unfaithful. They separated in the 1840s, and Fannie headed back to Europe, where she published a memoir of her travels in Italy. She was back in the States by the end of the decade, and they divorced in 1849 in a patriarchal society because she had disobeyed her husband and abandoned her children. Custody, unsurprisingly, went to the father. Mr. Butler was irresponsible and wasted much of his inheritance, so trustees sold off the estate's assets. In 1859, a two-day auction of the plantation slaves garnered $300,000, the largest single slave auction in the U.S. Fast forward to the Civil War. Fannie did publish her diaries both in Britain and the U.S. Reaction was probably greater across the pond because it swayed British public opinion against joining the Civil War on the part of the South. Journey of a Residence on a Georgian Plantation in 1838-1839, don't you love the snappy title? Was not without controversy among historians, as many of the stories she had included were those she'd heard from enslaved people and not ones she'd witnessed herself. It was all second-hand stories. Still, her impact approaches that of Harriet Beecher Stowe. That's not all she did. Another mention in the history books is a bit of trivia. Her memoir, it contains the first known written use of the word vegetarian. The sight and smell of raw meat are especially odious to me, and I have often thought that if I had to be my own cook, I should inevitably have become a vegetarian, probably indeed returned to my green and salad days. But she had someone else making her food. By 1877, Fannie was permanently back in England, where she continued to write and publish. One of her friends was Henry James, who used a story she'd told him as basis for his novel, Washington Square. With a granddaughter by her side, she died in 1893. Her disagreements with her ex had cost her in many ways. Her younger daughter sided with Pierce and defended his reputation. But Fannie's own legacy is one we admire today. She's put herself on the line. White supremacy is thoroughly established in our culture, in many of our institutions and companies, not to mention our government. It will take hard work, cooperation, sacrifice, and not a short amount of time. Will you be part of the team? Now let us rise in body and or spirit to sing hymn number 119. Once to every soul and nation.
Once to every soul and nation comes the moment to
Our closing words are, "If you have found freedom," by Laura Lynn Bellamy. If you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another, that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace. The flame is extinguished, but not our hopes for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world. Please join me in our congregational closing by Jim McGaw. Go in peace, seeking justice. Go in peace, committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. Go in the peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace. That ends our formal service, but we have another opportunity to be in community with one another. Join our virtual coffee hour on Zoom until 12:30 this afternoon. The link is in the email sent this morning from Westside UU Church. If you are not on our mailing list, please visit westsideuu.org and sign up by clicking the link at the very bottom of the homepage. Thank you again to Daniel Polk for his reflection this morning, and thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful week and be safe.